All right. Good morning. Good morning. Baby, it's cold outside. Yeah, it's really cold outside, you guys. I've had a really rough morning because I did not want to get out from under the warm covers, and I mean, part of me really appreciates the cold weather, especially right before Christmas. You know, kind of gets you a little bit into the Christmas spirit. But I'm almost ready for Christmas to be over now. So, yes, I'm at least warm up a little bit more. So, anyways, we are warming from within. So we'll just remember that. So, all right. So we come together every Sunday to remember our truth that we're whole, perfect, complete, just the way we are, and we are celebrating the holidays. And so I want to remind everybody that we Wednesday night at 6:30 we're going to have our candlelight service. It's a very beautiful service that we have here Wednesday night. We don't have a Christmas Eve service. This is kind of our Christmas Eve service. So please, if you don't have anything going on, please join us Wednesday night. Also on Saturday, the 31st, Sue will be having her burning bowl ceremony. So we'll do a burning bowl ceremony. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, and then that Sunday, then she will start off the new year with moving us in the right direction. So please join us with all these wonderful holiday activities, and then after service, please join today. After service, join us for some coffee and some goodies, some snacks, so and get warmed up and ready to go. So, all right. So we welcome everybody. Let's say our vision statement together. We are a loving, joy-filled community, honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. All right, so if you could just sit back, relax, open up your hearts and minds for Brother Bradford's beautiful music and Reverend Karen's beautiful message. Thank you.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind,
And I will wait upon the Lord.
wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
So, here in this place, in this quiet place of stillness, we can go within and listen to the truth that dwells within us at all times, in all ways. It is unshakable and unbreakable. For I know that is the power of the divine that lives and moves and has its being in, through, and as me, in, through, and as each of us, in, through, and as everyone, everywhere. And I know that that power is the power that is indeed consciously put in charge this day. It is peace and joy, love, happiness, harmony, wisdom, clarity, and so much more. And in that conscious choice, I know that our hearts are open to Reverend Karen's message. It allows us to be shifted in ways that we can't even imagine in this moment. And that everything in this service, the Bradford's music, and our collective fellowship before and after the service, everything about this day comes together in perfect harmony, knowing that the universe has a perfect idea for this day and it is already unfolding. So with a very grateful heart, I release this out into the synchronicity that is both love and law. And together we say, and so it is. So this is from a little book, which is a compilation that was put together after Ernest Holmes' death. It's called Light. And it's from a chapter called The Unseen and the Unheard. And in the first part, he says, if I could wave a magic wand before you and give you the power to perceive all the invisible sights and inaudible sounds around you at this moment, what would you see and what would you hear? And he goes on to describe an imagining of just light and sound and beauty everywhere. And he says, in this realm of the unseen and the unheard that shines and pulsates around you and within you, you unperceive during every moment of your life. But though invisible and inaudible, it is just as real as everything that you actually see and hear and feel. It is the domain in which scientists are beginning to discover more and more are the secrets of life and of the universe. For this unseen and unheard is not science fiction. In science laboratories all over the world, thousands of experiments are being performed that establish the reality of the unperceived phenomena beyond any shadow of a doubt, that prove these waves of the unseen light and the unheard sound are truly around us and within us at all times. What we see, the visible light, constitutes far less than a millionth part of all the radiation around us. What we hear, the audible sound, is far less than a millionth part of all the vibration constantly around our bodies. And what is even more important, light waves and sound waves make up in their unseen and unheard totality only a small part of the truly complete sum of all kinds of waves that are constantly churning in the ocean of space in which we exist. So what is the best way to see the unseen? For most of us, seeing is the first and the best step toward understanding in this profound treatise. In his profound treatise, The Phenomena of Man, Teilhard de Chardin expresses this thought in a vivid and arresting way. He remarks, seeing. We might say that the whole of life lies in that verb, if not ultimately, at least essentially. Again, he says, to see or to perish is the very condition laid upon everything that makes up the universe by reason of the mysterious gift of existence. And this, in superior measure, is man's condition. So take a moment and allow yourself to be open to see the unseen and to hear the unheard. And so it is.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh, and every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas.
Can just fix that. Oh. Magic. It's not usually that easy. Are you like really relieved back there in the booth? It's like, wow, the minister finally figured something out. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and what a joy to be here, and I am happy to be back. I was out last week unexpectedly, and I'm, as you can see, recuperating and feeling really good. Is it hard to play the guitar for Christmas carols? Yes, he hesitates into a big, bold yes, it is. Thank you for doing that, because we really do want at least a little Christmas music here at Christmas time. We really, we wait all year for this opportunity, and then we put it away neatly and, and anticipate all the events of the new year. And so this morning, I have a message. Do you realize it is the last Sunday morning before Christmas Sunday morning? And so my message is entitled Unraveling the Yet to Be. And I figured that was a perfect topic for us to look at. This is my last talk about celebrating the Christmas season in the way that we prepare our consciousness for that sort of newborn holy newness that comes to us through the Christmas story. We know that a baby is born in Bethlehem, and there's hope for humanity. And so all ministers everywhere are trying to tie that in to have us have some kind of connection to the holiday itself. I took the topic from a quotation from Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this teaching, and a really good book. I have that little book, and mine is really quite old. Sometimes when they get too old, they're a little... but you were so smart to put a little Mr. Taylor in there for the minister, because she loves Teilhard de Chardin, as you all know. So I want to talk today about that yet to be, unraveling that. It was such a good reading. It really spoke to the way I'm approaching these ideas. And here's the quote that Dr. Holmes left for us. And I think it's very inspiring. It really encouraged me to dive in and have some fun here. He said this: we can never completely fathom the infinite mind. He says something on that order frequently. He reminds us that, we can, in our finite human form, it's difficult to understand what infinite really means. So we can intellectualize, but the more you ponder it and you try and dig in to understand, like, they'll say things like you can't count the grains of sand on the beach, and, you start thinking about it in that way, it kind of overwhelms our brain. So he says we can never fully fathom that idea of infiniteness, but we shall always be discovering new lands because of it, because we live in this unending idea of future tomorrows. So evolution is an eternal unfoldment of the more yet to be. The more yet to be. And it really is a perfect time at the close of a year to begin to anticipate what are some of the ideas of what we would like to be included in that more yet to be. How would we like to unravel our own future and participate in it in the way that we begin to imagine the infinite possibilities in our very own lives. So from the human perspective, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try and blend the divine and the human and have a little takeaway, because the reality is, when we talk about some kind of infinite intelligence that created all of life, sometimes some of us are very comfortable saying there's God that is the creator of all life. Then we want to understand that. All of us want to be wise. I don't think anybody really doesn't want to be wise. I mean, have you ever been in public and you trip and you feel really foolish and somebody watches, somebody happens to see you? Did I tell you about that day I was running out to get the trash can and I wasn't, I was in my pajamas still. I was covered well, but I'm running out. It was raining, and something about the way the trash can set the way that machine that picks it up and sets it down had left it with the lid open, and all I could think of was that the rain is filling up my trash can, and I ran out. I'm trying to run out to save my trash can so it doesn't fill up with water. I don't know why I thought there was urgency in it. And the driveway is laid in quarters, and it's a little uneven in the middle, and in my hurrying out there, I caught that corner, twisted my ankle. I was running with such force. I hit the ground and rolled until I was up on my feet again. All the while, the UPS man had just pulled up in front of the house and watched the whole thing. So, I was pretty impressed. It's like and now I got to look cool because somebody watched, And he's embarrassed. He's looking down at his little thing, and he literally took off and left me to recover on my own. Once he didn't bring the package, whatever it was, he had to come by later when I wasn't around. So we don't like that, and the only thing worse than that is if somebody's around that says to you, you trip, and then somebody goes, "Oh, be careful." And then you're like, oh gosh, I not only feel stupid, somebody just called me stupid that I wasn't being careful. And so sometimes, do you ever get mad when you do something and somebody says, be careful, and you're like, well, do you think I wanted to do that? I really could not have done that roll and that land on my feet if I had planned it. I am not that woman. And miraculously, I didn't hurt anything. It was kind of incredible for a woman in her 70s. So nobody really wants to be foolish. We want to be wise, and we want to make good decisions, and we want to sort of solidify our understanding of life and how things work. And very often when we're talking about spiritual ideas, that includes the way we would like wisdom in the way that we find meaning and purpose in our lives. And I think that the reading was especially good, because what all this says to me is that there are mysteries in life that we would like answers to, or we would like to think that we have answers to the mysteries, like how we gravitate toward all those books that tell us what the afterlife is really like, because now we have all this proof. But the truth is, I loved how he was comfortable speaking to those unanswerable questions. If we were meant to know those things, they wouldn't be so mysterious. They wouldn't be such a part. It's a privilege that we can each have our own opinion of what comes next after this incarnation, right? That's a privilege. And every religion has a slightly different take on it. And it's especially pleasing to my heart and to my mind that in this faith, we don't tell you what to believe. We don't have a strong emphasis on you better get your act together if you want to go to heaven. You know, we don't do any of that guilt kind of laden we don't have a evacuation philosophy that that's going to save you in that way. So we can tell, you got your own beliefs, and that's where we're gifted in any discussion on immortality. You're encouraged to look at how you intuit all of that stuff. We're doing Gourmet for God. We're starting those events. I've actually had 3 events at my house in the last 10 days. And as I'm looking around there are several people that a year ago I didn't know you. And now you've been to my home and we broke bread together. And it's so lovely to really stand here and feel like we're conversing in a more intimate way. So, I'm sorry you guys couldn't make it, but we're happy to see you, and we'll do something else. We'll have fun in some other way, because that's how we really get to know each other. And I love that we, really encourage that ability to listen to each other and to have opposing views, and we don't lose any sleep over it. We can still love each other and come together on Sundays and find these ways that we connect. So I think that the trick is, we'd like to know all those answers to things, because then when the storms of life blow through our own experience, we might feel a little more stable, or we might remember that we're going to recover from whatever this storm is. That nature gives us this gorgeous example of how that happens. And so it's just true that we are tossed about in life, and that we don't know those things, and that we would really like to be more sure. And insurance companies are so prosperous because of our desire to have things be a little more stable in our life, right? My husband used to say, they're betting, the insurance company is betting you won't need the money, and you're betting that you will need the money, which is really a funny way to look at life. We're covering it's a gamble. It's a gamble. So we are always looking to minimize our gamble. But you know what? That's what spiritual teachings are for. So we can gain a little more clarity, a better sense of balance in how we move through our own individual lives with a good foundation, a foundation that we personalize and then make work for ourselves. So over time, I always feel like there must be a secret age, that if you live to be this age, you just then are granted all this wisdom. But what we really do is we earn it. It's if you pay attention as you're moving through those storms and you're watching the bigger happenings in the world and the lives of the other people around you, you begin to see that there's a deeper understanding that can actually comfort us in many ways. In fact, it's a lot more comforting than any insurance company could ever bring into your life. What we begin to see is that all of life is sacred. And that in every bump in the road, or every surprise encounter that we weren't really happy to encounter, that there's a little more of the story. Another piece of the story is given to us, and then we decide what that will mean to us. So we are always writing the story of our own life in that sort of way. And the more we pay attention to life, then we begin to see that that there's this continuance, this continuity, this way that life is forever and ever recreating itself, and that there's the way that Holmes speaks to discovering new lands, and that evolution is that eternal unfoldment. And in fact, I would say it's likely, the odds are likely, that if you are listening to this message, whether or not you're sitting in the sanctuary, you might be listening from the comfort of your own home, but you also, because of technology, someone could be listening to this message, hearing these words right now, 100 years in the future. Think of the way technology has given us this ability to archive into perpetuity somehow, and preserving these things. And in 100 years, the words of this message will be just as relevant as they are now, even though none of us will be there. And even though the world will have changed in incredible ways we can't even imagine. So if the odds are, if you're hearing this message then or now, that you are probably one of those people that has just enough open-mindedness within you to examine the possibilities of how spiritual principle impacts our lives, which is what all religion is ultimately about. I think that every one of us will have moments in our lives where we need to be reminded that everything really is going to be okay. It was one of the best fights my husband and I had all the time. You know, it's like my life would get whacked out for some reason. I would over worry about something that didn't need that much worrying. He never worried enough from my point of view. And it's true, right, honey? I knew one day it would happen. I knew he could do it. I'm going to start bringing that cutout of him and putting it in my chair so I can go, right, honey? Yeah, that was funny. Thanks. That was funny. I like to have fun up here. Yeah, that was one of our great fights. So one year I bought this giant book. It's not really a book, but it fits in the bookcase nicely, but it's in really big print. It says, everything really is going to be okay. And his recliner was right across from that. And I used to go, when I would get upset and I'd be worrying about something and he wouldn't pick up on it, as soon as I picked up on it, I would go, you have to help me here. Read. Look, it's right in front of you. Just read it out loud and remind me that life is going to be okay, because right now I'm a little overwhelmed by whatever it is. And so we laughed at that all the time, that we just need reminding from time to time that this too shall pass, and we all get back on our feet eventually. And when it feels like that's not true, when it feels like your life is really falling apart, or unraveling is the word that I'm using and thinking of today, it's just a time where you can't see the truth. And what I believe is that in those times where it's difficult to see the truth or sense a greater reality, and we get caught up in the problems, I think that there are one of two possibilities of what's going on for us as individuals. And by the way, I didn't research this, I just made it up. So don't take it too seriously. But I think the one of two things that happens is typically we just haven't waited long enough. You know, you may pray about it, give it to God, let go and let God, all those sweet little cliches, statements we make. But then we want it now. And so sometimes it's right in front of you, or it's around the next bend. You just can't see around the next bend yet because you haven't done the work you need to do to get there. And we just need to take a breath and come back to trusting that there is this ongoing process that's always unfolding. So I was thinking of it like this, like the lesson, we know this, they've said it in many ways, that the lesson is not visible to the student until the student has every other piece in place to be able to see whatever the lesson is. And the second thing I think that goes wrong is that a lot of us step into our problems thinking that we know what the solution should be, but we have all these obstacles as to why we can't get to the solution. But the problem is that we're attached to the outcome that we think is the solution, and we have forgotten that in God, all things are possible, and there are infinite possibilities of how things can be rearranged in order to get us to what we might consider finally the other side of the problem. And usually in that case, it is right in front of you. I love those stories of people that are looking for the perfect partner, and then they take a class, in a metaphysical, spiritual setting like this, and they learn that, I'm just going to affirm, and and I have to know exactly what I want, and I have to say it exactly right, because God might not be able to figure it out by what, And so you plan exactly what this person is going to be like, and then long time down the road, you figure out, like, I was leaving out. I thought he had to be tall. Oh, look at all the wonderful possibilities for relationship that didn't fit that category that might have been right in front of me, and I never could have seen them because I thought I knew the answer to the thing. That's why I always say to the thing. That's why I always say, go back to the quality. Look for the divine God quality that your heart is really aching for. Now, I have a great example of the way that we can see that the nature of life is always, there is always change in life, because life supports evolution. Life supports the process of life continuing. And so I had this opportunity to really look at this week. I was invited to a Christmas production in Phoenix on Friday night, and so I realized I have not been out at night in a long time, and it's cold outside, and I knew exactly what I wanted to wear, and I was looking for something, a wrap of some sort to keep me warm, and so I forgot that I have this drawer just full of really pretty scarves, like heavy or warm things I can wrap around me, and they complement whatever I'm wearing. And so I look through my drawer and I find this really good old friend of a wrap. She's so amazing, and she's one color, and it's kind of neutral. It goes with lots of my favorite color combinations to wear out, and so I pull her out of the drawer, and I decide I'm gonna freshen her. I'm gonna throw her in the dryer with a clean dryer sheet, and I'm gonna make her smell pretty and get the wrinkles out of her. And I go later to get it out of the dryer, and I'm laying it flat and I'm smoothing it out. It's so beautiful, and I'm starting to fold it, and I lay it down again, and I'm smoothing it out, and I notice that there were a couple of snags in one of my favorite wraps. Now, the wrap is really old, because as I'm loving it, I'm feeling comforted by how much pleasure it's brought me through the years. I've had this wrap. It's one of those long, what do you call it? It's got a name. Yes, that word. I will never say that word. But yes, it's that. And it's so long that you can just drape it over and it has a little fringe, or you can do those fun things. So I was thinking while I'm folding it and loving it of all the different ways I've draped it around me or knotted every time the trend changes and you learn something new. And now, come on, we can watch a 5-minute video on YouTube and and learn something new that we hadn't even thought of. Is what you can do with that. Yeah, however you say that. Yeah. So I noticed that my beloved wrap has a couple of snags in it, and when you smooth them out, you can see that there are little holes that have started. And in fact, if you look really close, you can see that the weaving of the fabric is unraveling. It really is unraveling. And it made my heart a little tender, but I folded it up and I put it in my bag, and I went and I had a wonderful evening out, and I got to take my beautiful friend with me. Now, why this is relevant now is because it is true that sometimes our favorite things unravel. But it's at the moment that we notice things are unraveling, that we are beginning to discover new possibilities. Sometimes you got to let go of your old favorite something, right? In fact, there might be, dozens of things that would bring me even more pleasure as I look at the possibility of replacing those old favorite things. But it is the acknowledgement that it's got some holes. It's not going to last forever. It's in that moment of considering the possibility of letting something go that we begin to realize that sometimes things outgrow their purpose in our life. Things don't serve us in the same way they always did. I always appreciate it when somebody will tell me, like, really, you're still wearing that ratty old thing? Usually you don't say it like that, but I need that kind of help because I could never be a Buddhist. I like being attached to my stuff. So I found this fabulous quote that sort of sums it all up by a woman named Florida, her name's really Florida, Scott Maxwell. And Florida Scott, anybody know that name already? I had never heard of this woman. She was an author. In fact, she was a playwright. And she was also a psychologist. She's no longer living. She passed in 1979, but she studied directly under Carl Jung. So imagine that. What would that be like to be able to say you studied under one of the great thinkers that began our understanding of such things as the value of counseling? And Carl Jung is really where we start dipping into what in seminary we call that depth psychology, where you're mixing the worlds of science and spirituality together in order to grow and have a better understanding of life. Florida Scott Maxwell said this. This is good. Life does not accommodate you, it breaks you open. Right? Psychologists that studied under Carl Jung. Life does not accommodate you, it breaks you open. Every seed must destroy its container or else there would be no fruition. Think about it. Every seed has some kind of potential in it, but that potential cannot come into being until that husk or the shell around it is shattered, until the container is broken open in some way. So everything that has ever bloomed was once a seed that had to break the container that kept it safe until its time came, in order to burst forth, in order to step into what is intended to be or intended to become. We have to get out of our shell. And nothing gets us out of our shell better than the challenges that life just naturally presents. So when I look at that very idea, these statements remind me that the challenges that we face are very often the catalyst for our growth, that the new ideas, the new ways of being, or what we need to let go of would never occur to us if we didn't walk through those challenges. The potential for life within us can only be revealed as we make those breakthroughs. And all of us go through tough times. I think it's safe to say that there are situations in life that we will each encounter or have encountered in our own experiences where it feels like God has deserted you. Where it feels like, maybe if you don't see it in that religious sort of way, like instead of seeing God desert you, it might be easy to look at another person and say, well, I wasn't born into that family, or that person is always so lucky. It's easy for us to look outside of ourselves and believe other people have it better off than we do, that they're living a more favored life. And I would say to you that it's this teaching that I discovered in my early adulthood this teaching taught me that I could have a better life. And I started making choices different than I had made in the past. This was not my husband's faith. You know that. He came to church here because he loved seeing his wife up here. He loved it. He also loved saying he helped me pick out what I was going to wear that day. Those were the things that mattered to him. But I had to find a way as a very married woman to establish my own center of gravity in my own life. And it was this teaching that did that for me. So yes, I do say sometimes, I don't now, but I used to say all the time, I have a really enchanted life. And at some point, I realized people believed that I just had this enchanted life. And that what I wasn't saying was I made this life enchanted. And anybody can do the same thing because it's an inside job. It starts when you begin to see that you have choices in your life and that you can take any situation and view it through a different lens and consequently make different choices in your life. Someone said to me, and this is not a bad thing, I share it because I think it's kind of a beautiful thing, and I love that people trust me enough to speak to me this way. But someone said to me, since your husband died, you're way more credible now. And I thought, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I asked her, and she said to me, well, it's just that you always had him. And, and you were lucky to have him. And it was like you didn't know what it was like for the rest of us. And you know what? I didn't. I got married when I was 20 years old. I was married for 50 years. So that's true. But everybody watching me move through this experience last year, what you didn't know, because I don't talk about it so much, is how all the hardships I've had in my life that led me to be able to say, I really do believe I've had this enchanted life. I've had an enchanted life because I named it that. And you know how it started? Way back in the very beginning, when I took my first foundation class in this teaching, way back in those early days, before I lived in Asia, before I had a beach house, before I realized that he really was the love of my life. Because come on, there's that reality too. I started looking at spiritual principle, and I was confused by that idea of the more yet to be. What do you mean more? Wouldn't it be better to figure out how to be happy with what you have? And I was struggling with trying to figure that out, and so I asked myself, okay, Miss Karen, if money wasn't a problem, what little luxury would bring you joy in your life? Do you ever dare to ask questions like that? You should. It changed my life. And you know what I answered to myself? Nobody knew this. You know what would bring me pleasure? Fresh flowers every day. Fresh cut flowers in the house every day. If I could just have somebody take care of that for me and I could have fresh flowers all the time in the house. And as soon as I said that out loud to myself or wrote it in my journal, however it became a part of my reality, I realized, I was doing dishes in the kitchen sink and I was looking out into my backyard, the house that I lived in for 27 years with that man. I'm looking out there, and the yard had a lot of clover, and the clover was blooming in those little yellow flowers. When I was a kid, we called those mustard flowers. Did anybody else used to call the clover the mustard flower? You know why we called them mustard? Because at the elementary school, when I was a real little girl, we used to pick those pretty little flowers, and if you put them on your tongue, they're very bitter. You probably die from it now, I don't know. Don't try it. I'm not saying go try it. Obviously, I lived through it, but we called them mustard because they tasted like mustard if you put it on your tongue right after you picked it. So I went in my backyard. We had no money. We were sharing one car. I went in my backyard and I picked a handful of little yellow mustard flowers and I put them in the tiniest little vase I could find, and they only lasted overnight. But guess what? the season was long, and I picked fresh flowers every day for as long as I wanted to. As long as it brought me pleasure, I had fresh picked flowers in the house every day. So it starts in a way you don't expect, but suddenly you begin to realize, oh, there's something in me that has an instinct for this, for the way life really and truly is. And I don't have to be lucky, and I don't have to have a certain amount of money to have the things that make me the most happy. Dr. Holmes worded it this way. Holmes said in the Science of Mind textbook, in the very first chapter, like the third page in that first chapter, it's actually page 28, but it's the very first chapter and the first few paragraphs in, and it says, he said this, God does not respond to some more than others, but others respond to God more than others. There it is. There it is, page 28, if you want to look at it more deeply. So what I think, here's how I then make my own theory around all of this. I think that life happens and that all of us go through stuff at very different levels, but we all also have a different relationship with the way that we move through our things, our storms. And this is not a good thing, but what I know is some of us have a higher tolerance for pain and suffering than others of us. And I would say that as I evolved in my own spiritual path, I realized that I didn't need to take in so much suffering and so much pain in my life, that I was equipped with the ability to make different choices and to change the outcome of my own life and my relationship to my experiences. So you have your own threshold for pain and for suffering. And here's the way it works. There will be a time, and you've probably bumped into it in one way or another through the years, where you will know clearly that that's your limit. So you take a certain, maybe it's a relationship, or a certain condition in your life, and you tolerate it, and you grin, and you bear it, and you do the best you can. And one day, you just feel like you've been pushed just more than is acceptable, and you slam your foot down, and you draw the proverbial line in the sand. You draw that line, and you say, enough. There has to be another way. I don't like this. I'm not willing to tolerate this anymore. I'm going to make a different choice, and I'm going to open myself to allow God to show me whatever that might be. Marcus Aurelius, I've quoted from him recently. He's that first century. He was one of the Roman emperors of the Roman Empire in that very first century, a couple thousand years ago. He said that everything in this very moment is nothing more than a pinpoint in eternity. Everything, no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, in the very moment you remember this, it's just a pinpoint in eternity in a much bigger way. And then he went on to say this, and this is where it gets weighty. Everything is petty. Everything is changeable. Everything is perishable, and everything comes from beyond. It's from that universal principle, and it comes either directly or it comes as a secondary consequence. Isn't this the stuff we teach? Isn't this what we talk about every Sunday when we get together and every lesson we do together? So here we have this first century wisdom on understanding the laws of cause and effect, or if you want to put it in current language, we could say what goes around comes around, right? Or if you want to look at it from a scholarly biblical way, we would say you reap what you sow. right? So if I'm planting envy in my life, I'm looking out there and seeing things I don't have, and I'm having envious, I'm planting seeds of envy, then that's what I'm going to reap. Nothing good is going to come from that. As I go back to that opening quote where Holmes said, we just can't fathom. There's no way we can completely fathom the idea of infinity. Therefore, he says, we should always be discovering new lands. Should always be discovering new lands. Something's not going right. Consider it that you're just a great adventurer right now, and you're out on this new discovery to see what's there. Things are always unraveling in our lives. And what do you do when something unravels? I've got this beautiful scarf that I really love. Well, I can do one of three things. I can release it, let it go. If I brought it to the thrift store, one of you might actually buy it. It might serve a purpose for you. But we can release when things are unraveling, we can release them. We can attempt to mend them, which I do way too much in my life. I don't get to let go till I'm really frustrated usually. Or we can repurpose them. Now, in my personal situation, I had the wrap, the scarf in my bag through the whole Christmas production in this beautiful theater. And when I reached down to grab my bag when we were ready to leave, I looked and I felt it, and it was right there. And I pulled it out, and I must have draped it over my arm. I'm not really sure what I did with it. But somewhere between leaving the theater and arriving at the car, I realized I had lost my favorite wrap. I left it at the theater, dropped it. Somebody else, I hope they just took it and loved it, but or passed it on to somebody that would appreciate it. But I realized I had lost my special wrap that I had actually took time to love and appreciate and remember when I was getting ready to leave. So my first thought, I will not lie, you could probably imagine my first thought. Don't say it out loud. It's not church appropriate. I'm sure of that. My first thought was like, it figures. This is exactly how the whole year has gone for me, right? You love something, it disappears. It's like you hang on and it goes away anyhow. And I thought, the other thought that would have been typical for me is like, I've had to let go of everything else that brought me comfort. Why not lose that as well? It's just a symbol of the change I'm going through. And you know what? It really is, right? Things unravel. We release things willingly and sometimes unwillingly. Life changes, and life is always evolving. And what I know and what I knew very quickly upon recognizing, I had it, now I don't have it. What I realized was that it is the Christmas season. And the Christmas season is about welcoming and blessing holy newness into our lives. And it's an opportunity for me to do that in all kinds of ways. So, you could say that if we expand that out and not just look at it in the individualized personal way that we relate to our stuff, if you expand that out, you might say that the world has sort of unraveled really well in recent months, the last couple of years. But I am so delighted to be able to know, to look at our spiritual community and to understand it through and through and see that we are really better than we have ever been. And again, I think part of that is looking at the new relationships I have with people that a year ago I may not have even known your name, and now we have something more than that. So my challenge to each of you, whether you're here or home or living in the future 100 years from now, my challenge is, as we allow this year to close, let us look at how we intend to begin the upcoming new year. And I am pushing us to have this theme of being remarkable. So my challenge to each of you and to myself is let's be remarkable. Let's set an intention to evolve into our next best yet to be in 2023. The world is still our oyster. And you know, the universe takes irritations and makes beautiful, valuable pearls out of what looks like it shouldn't be there. So I want to leave you with this little story that comes from Robert Fulghum. Do you remember that Robert Fulghum is the guy who said, he wrote his first book, I think, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Remember that guy? Well, here's a story I remember reading years ago, and it just came into my life again this week. He said this: maybe we should create and develop a Crayola bomb as our next secret weapon. Right? Maybe we could use it as a happiness weapon. Maybe we could even call it a beauty bomb. And the next time there's a crisis anywhere in the world, we can launch those rockets and they will go up into the heavens and burst open, and thousands upon thousands of little parachutes will pop out from the bomb, and every parachute will have attached to it a box of crayons. Right? And he said, oh, and it won't be none of those cheap ones, none of those only 8 crayons in a box. We're going to make it the big 64 colors in the crayon box. You know, the one with the sharpener at the bottom of it. And we're going to drop all this joy and blast it out in it. The colors are so massive that they have all the fun names, you know, like peach and lime, not just the ordinary colors, right? Periwinkle and umber. And they also throw in those 3 crayons, the silver and the gold and the copper. I love the copper crayon the best. That's always the one that goes flat first. And then when the people when they catch their parachute, that the look on their face is going to be just filled with curiosity and amazement and gratitude, because they're going to be so excited. They have this brand new box of crayons, and then they're going to go out and color the world with their imaginations. So maybe Holmes is right that we can't fathom infinite possibilities, but something in us knows that they exist. And the one thing we can do for sure is to be confident in the way this gorgeous life was created, that there is always more yet to come. That's what I wanted to say today. So I think the best thing to do right now is to pray. So just get comfortable where you're seated. And allow yourself to begin to sense and feel the presence of God right where you are. In this present moment, where infinite possibilities abide. We feel that love of God within us, and we recognize it as this activity of life, this movement within us that reminds us of the indwelling presence of potential, of perfection, of being complete and whole, and of belonging to something that is greater than we are. I feel that love of God, and I know that it is life's guarantee that we live and exist in that eternal place of evolving and shifting and changing and expanding in what's possible in our very own lives. And so we can join together in knowing that there are ways to bring peace and beauty and joy to this planet through our own recognition and our acceptance of those possibilities that desire to express in our own lives. So as we see that it is true, things unravel, that weavings begin to separate and the threads of life appear to leave evidence of storms or of use or of aging, that there is always something new in that shift, in that storm, in that way that life impacts us in our own movement. And that what is possible, it's likely has not even crossed our minds yet. And so right now, in this holy moment of time on the eve before Christmas, we recognize that this ending of a year of which we have all shared conditions and situations and experiences, that right here we stand on the cusp of holy newness for our own lives, for the life of this spiritual community, and for the future of this entire world. And that there is an intelligence that supports that forward moving, and it works even when we are not aware of it. So in this moment where we are in a season of change and transformation, we simply remember that there is that activity of life within us that restores us to health when we feel that our well-being is compromised in any way. There is that knowing of the fullness of life being revealed even as the days seem short and dark and dreary and cold, that there is always spring on the horizon. And in that way that the seeds of possibility are embedded within our own individual beings, that it is our job to face the challenges and to remove the husk and the shell that keeps us, that prohibits us from blooming and blossoming and growing in ways that we have been called to grow and to heal and to prosper. So I know that transformational things are unfolding right now, that there is a healing going on right in this room, right at the center of our very own lives, and that healing is truly the revealing of our own next best yet to be. So I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. Thank you for this way we can look at the progress of this spiritual community through troubled times and see that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, there is a whole new land that we are discovering, and we are up for the work. We are ready to receive, and we are ready to color our lives with this beautiful imagination that God has given us. So in that great and amazing state of gratitude, of feeling overflowing thanks for all the good and all the good that is yet to come, we simply release the words of this prayer into that dynamic law that always responds affirmatively. We release it, we let it be, and together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful.
Yes, I am grateful. So thank you, Bradfords. So now is the time to remember the abundance of our lives and the abundance of our community. I want to remind everybody that we have the tithing boxes in the back of the room and also in Packey Hall. So we appreciate your support of our community. So let's say our one more thing. I'm sorry. If you have not put a Christmas bulb on the tree, I invite you up to put a Christmas bulb on our Christmas tree. So join us in that celebration of beautifying our beautiful Christmas tree. All right. So let's say our giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.
And we have choir rehearsal today after we have our little snack.
Ready?
Yep. Please rise for our last song. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Sing that. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. Now sing it. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life to live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life to live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life to live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life. Live. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, it feels so good to be alive.
That. Well, I have one more thing that I wanted to share with you today, and that is that I have another sad announcement. Our beautiful Janice Olson has made her transition. So we will be having a memorial service for her in this sanctuary on Saturday, January the 7th at 2 p.m. So mark your calendar. It'll be in the newsletter this week. And gosh, a lot of great people helping us from the other side.
All right, so let's say our closing affirmation together. If you just repeat after me. I trust that I am supported and guided. And all things are possible. And so it is.